I'm Natasha Duarte, Director of the Composting Association of Vermont, and I'm joined by Libby Weiland of the Vermont Community Garden Network today. Many rural community composting sites depend on volunteers to be sustainable, so we'll be talking about what volunteers want and how to effectively engage them.
So what do your volunteers want? We know what we want from them, but what do our volunteers want from us? Have you ever volunteered before? Take a second and just picture your least favorite volunteering memory. What was it about the experience that didn't work for you? What would you have changed or wanted more of? Okay, so now picture your most favorite volunteering memory. What was it about the experience that worked so well for you, and what kept you coming back? This exercise is intended to put you in the shoes of your volunteers. Different people look for different types of volunteer experiences. Some people care about the cause in particular. Others are looking for social time. Some are really looking to get involved in specific tasks. Others are really more jack-of-all-trade volunteers. Be aware and plan accordingly. This said, there are some elements that tend to be universal in making a volunteer experience memorable in a good way, and that will make your volunteers want to stay involved. What do your volunteers want? Well, first, they want to do interesting work, whether that's the work itself that's interesting or simply an understanding of its impact. Many volunteers are looking for a meaningful experience. Take the time to explain the impact of the work that they'll be doing. Match volunteers with jobs that they'll do well and that they'll enjoy by balancing interests, skills, knowledge, and commitment. Get a sense of this by surveying your volunteers or really just simply paying attention when you're spending time together. Also, take the time to think about how you can make your volunteer opportunity fun by rotating jobs or playing games, allowing people to work together if desired. Consider how to make volunteer opportunities more than just work. For example, combine work days with potlucks or other social events. And then combine the work with an opportunity to learn something new. For example, if invasive snakeworms are an issue in your area, you might bring in someone who can check out your site and explain what to look for and what to do. Or you might consider bringing in a soil health expert to help make the connection between compost, soil health, and water, which may be especially relevant for composters at community garden sites. And then allow longtime volunteers the opportunity to try new things and actively cultivate shared leadership to keep things fresh and support the sustainability of your group. You can learn more about this on our shared leadership video. Check it out to get some more ideas. So your volunteers also want to know the commitment involved. So in addition to offering a variety of types of tasks that match interests and skills, also provide a variety of opportunities with different time commitments. So think about one-time project-oriented tasks versus ongoing tasks, weekly versus monthly, weekday versus weekend, and even seasonal, summer versus winter. Consider offering opportunities that fit into people's existing lifestyles and schedules. For example, family-oriented work days on weekends or after school hours, or more flexible days and times that people can come and contribute on their own or with a small work crew. During COVID times, we need to be particularly conscious of this, thinking about individual or small group scheduling to make sure we can have socially distanced work parties. So how to organize this? You can use scheduling tools that are online, such as Google Calendar or signupgenius.com, or a simple whiteboard on site to divide out those tasks. Also have ways to keep track of the work accomplished, such as a shared Google document or even an on-site log binder that can be accessible for all volunteers to track their time and tasks.
Volunteers also want you to be prepared for them. Provide what's needed, the right tools for the job, instructions, visual guides, and whatever else you think is needed for your volunteers to feel welcomed and ready for work. Identify the tasks that you're asking volunteers to do and prepare a job description for each activity. It may be that some of your volunteers are jack of all trades, pitching in wherever needed on a specific day, like greeting people and answering questions on a food scrap drop-off day. But it may also be helpful to have some volunteers in charge of specific activities, like monitoring and deciding when to move compost materials from one bin to the next. We've created a tip sheet to include details like what, if anything, they need to bring, how to dress, approximately how long the job will take, and whatever other bits of information would be helpful to them. It can also be helpful to develop an annual maintenance plan for internal planning and identifying when and how many volunteers will be needed. What this looks like will depend in part on the compost system you use and if you use the community compost site year-round or not. Some garden sites, for example, aren't accessible during the winter months. In these cases, they need to think about putting their composting system to rest for the winter and then bringing it back out of hibernation in the spring. Regardless, there are often seasonal changes to consider when managing a compost site. For ongoing tasks, it can be super helpful to have a way of posting what needs to happen. So when volunteers come to your site, they can check out the whiteboard or a list. The tasks will vary a little depending on how your site is managed, but having a list of these ongoing tasks can be really helpful.
So your volunteers want to feel welcomed. Foster a fun, friendly, welcoming group culture. You can do this through social activities, like we mentioned earlier. You can also just share this simply by having volunteers share something about themselves, whether that's at an in-person orientation, if you're having that, or even remotely, like this photo of participants at the Garden at 485 Elm site. Help know who to expect on site and say hello when you see them. Or even just thinking about how you set up the site with helpful, friendly signage, having the right tools needed for the job, as Natasha just mentioned, really help to keep people feeling welcome and like you have a supportive, friendly site. Also, same goes for your outward communication and outreach to the public and to your neighbors. Communicate about what you're doing and why, and kind of keeping up that friendly group culture will keep those relationships in good standing, which is important, but also can potentially help you recruit new volunteers and participants.
Volunteers also want good training. Hold an on-site orientation for them. Make it fun and interesting so that people remember things. Think of ways to get your whole site community involved. At this site, the compost stewards worked with kids to put on an interactive training for the adults, sort of flipping the normal paradigm upside down and having it be much more fun and interactive for the whole community. Remember that people learn differently and may need to see, hear, read, and practice before they feel confident. Offer support. Be available for questions. Pair experienced and unexperienced volunteers together so that they can learn from each other. Revisit training as needed, and remember to be responsive to their needs in terms of what's working for them and what isn't. Remember, providing clear instructions can make a big difference in how confident your volunteers feel in doing their work. Volunteers also want you to communicate with them clearly and often. Make sure there's a simple way for volunteers to communicate with project leadership and with each other. Find ways of communicating that are easy and most useful for your unique group of volunteers. For some groups, this could be by phone, email. It may be that you have either an online or a physical bulletin board where you can leave notes for each other. It's always good to make time to meet in person when possible, but you can also post through social media or send out e-newsletters like this one group does. Keep up a regular connection with your volunteers, communicating things such as announcements, thank yous, progress, opportunities, expectation, or feedback. Having instructional signage and educational tools available on site is also a good idea. Instructional signage might include step-by-step instructions, reminders, and visual cues. Remember that some of the instructions are good to send home with your participants. Flyers or reminders or fridge magnets indicating what kinds of materials your site does accept, and importantly, what materials you don't want to accept in your compost system. It can also be helpful to provide educational guides. This might be handbooks or tips or different visuals. This might be the actual science behind composting or how to use compost. Other sites also include information about why they're engaged in community composting.
All right, so last but not least, your volunteers want to be appreciated. Recognize your volunteers. So at your site, like this note to Workday volunteers, face-to-face, just saying thank you as much as possible, or even going as far to feature your volunteers in newsletters or newspaper articles. Personalize your thank yous when possible and appropriate, sharing volunteer names and what they helped you to accomplish. Remember, these are the people who make it all possible. You couldn't do it without them. When your volunteers are happy and fulfilled, they're more likely to engage more deeply, take on new and different roles, such as stepping into leadership positions. And this is what keeps our sites going in the long run. For more on this idea, see our shared leadership video.
Much of the content in this video was adapted from VCGN and What Do Your Volunteers Want? 10 Ways to Make Them Happy by Joanne Fritz. You can find additional resources and tip sheets on the Northeast Recycling Council website at nerc.org and also at the Composting Association of Vermont Community Composting Resources page. Please feel free to contact us as well. Myself, Natasha Duarte, the Composting Association of Vermont, Libby Weiland at Vermont Community Garden Network, or Lynn Rubenstein from the Northeast Recycling Council.